All right, good morning everyone. Welcome to the monthly NEMSIS TAC public training. It is 10 a.m. here in Utah, and today we're going to be doing a training on our new Naloxone administration dashboard. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us on today's call, and then I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So from our website, nemsis.org, you can find our new dashboard by going to View Reports and clicking on Public Reports. From our Public Reports page, if you scroll down past the text, you'll see that we have a few options for different items. All of our new dashboards are going to be under version 3 dashboards because they're created on our latest version 3 data set. And at the top of that version 3 public dashboards list is our Naloxone administration dashboard. You may go ahead and open that one up. So before I dive right into this dashboard, I want to talk a little bit about the data sets that we use to look at naloxone administrations. This is a new thing for us. We used both our version 2 data and our version 3 data in this dashboard to examine different parts of how naloxone was being administered. So in version 2, while we don't have as detailed data, we do have data going back a little further. So we were able to look at trends over time. And in version 3, our data is a little more detailed, but doesn't cover as many places or cover as much time. So we use that to sort of dig into more specific information. So the first tab of this dashboard is going to show you some version 2 data over the past 3 years with a projection. And the second tab is going to give you some details such as demographics and how many times naloxone was administered. So I'm going to go ahead and start right here on tab 1, which uses our version 2 data to look at the history of naloxone over time. So what we have here is on the x-axis just time over 3 years with a projection through this year, and then on the y-axis just a rate of naloxone. So for every activation that we receive in our database, this is just a rate of the activations where any naloxone was administered to all activations. So you can see that rate has been increasing over the years. If you mouse over the marks for each month, you can get the exact number for that point in time. And then we have our projection here, which just indicates an increase in naloxone administrations through 2017. This is pretty straightforward. There isn't a lot of clickability or filtering that can be done on this tab, but it's supposed to maybe orient what naloxone administration has looked like in EMS data over the past 3 years or so. So I'm going to jump to a second tab, which is the demographics and details for events. And we'll spend much more time here. So this is where we used our wealth of information in the version 3 data set. So we have 48,000 activations in our data set where any naloxone was administered, and that covers 993 EMS agencies and 22 different states and territories. In this case, that would be all the territories, which are states and territories that are submitting data to us at the NEMSIS TAC. So below that, we have a few different categories. We have demographics for the patients, date and time, and then we have some clinical measures at the bottom. So I'm going to start with demographics to sort of show some of the functionality here. So the first one is just sex, male or female patients. You can see we have percents, and if you mouse over, you can get an exact count. So one thing to notice here is that naloxone is administered more often to males. So if we want to know more about that specific patient group, we can click on the icon for the male, and it will filter the data set. So we can see up at the top now that we're looking at 29,000 activations out of our total of 48,000. These scorecard bars at the top of the dashboard will adjust as you click and filter to show you how much of the data you're looking at, and especially in relation to the entire data set. So clicking on the little male icon has filtered everything else on the dashboard and made some changes to our age distribution. If I click on them again, I can leave that filter. So below sex, we have just a simple bar chart of age by 5-year age groups. from 0 to 4-year-olds all the way up to those 100 years and older. You could see a nice peak for 35 to 39-year-olds, which again can be used as a filter. So if we want to know about children who have been administered naloxone, one thing we can do is we could draw a box over the bars for 0 to 19, and that will create a filter to look more at those pediatric patients. So if I scroll back up, I can see that that's only 1,400 activations out of our data set there. So good, not that many. So our next section here, under date and time, we have a month and year heat map. So this is somewhat analogous to the line chart on the first page. It just shows the rate of an activation with naloxone administered to all activations we have in our data set. So you can see over time the rate is increasing, although it's kind of small. There's a peak in June and then it trails off, and this data set goes only partially through September, of course, so we don't have the full data for September to really calculate on. So it's probably valuable up through about August here. If you mouse over, you can see a count for each month within that year, as well as some other details. Again, everything is a filter. You want a specific month within a year, you can click on the cell, like this one. If I click on that, it'll filter to January 2016. If I want to know about the month of every month of June, I can click on the month of June, and it'll filter to all activations in June, whether it was 2016 or 2017. Or if I want to know about a year, I could click on the year 2016, and it will just show me activations within that year. Below that, we have another heat map that looks at a different type of time, the timing within the week, so time of day and the day of week. You can see that naloxone administrations are peaking on the weekend in the evenings. This sort of meets expectations for what we would expect to see here. Again, everything's clickable. If you just want to look at those evening activations, you can click on either a cell or a time or a day. And you can see if I start clicking into some of the demographics that we will see changes in the heat map. So that's one way in which you could explore this data set. Now, a little more interesting maybe is the clinical measures that we have down here in these last 4 sections, in these last 4 charts. So the first one here is the number of times that naloxone was administered for every record we have. So for most records we have in our data set, naloxone was only administered once. But we do have some records where it was given 2, 3, or 4 times. So if you want to know about the cases where naloxone is being administered repeatedly, you could drag a box over those to select them and filter in. And this number right here is just the average number of administrations per record in our data set, which is pretty close to 1, which is good. So the heat maps we have here are just the complaints reported by dispatch and providers' impressions for these patients who have had naloxone administered. So generally, when these calls come in, they're coming in for an overdose, for poisoning, or unconscious, or fainting, which tracks with expectations. But we do see some other situations here. For example, 1.5% of our naloxone administrations have a call come in for stroke. So impressions, this is what the EMS provider on the scene has documented as what the problem is, what they believe the problem is. And again, we mostly see what meets expectations: opioid abuse, poisoning, change in mental status. But we do also see some other things like epilepsy and seizures, and unknown has a pretty high value, unfortunately. So, and then the last chart we have here, which is probably more interesting than some of the others, is what we know about who is administering naloxone. So this value is looking at whether or not it was given before EMS showed up on the scene. And most of the time, it wasn't. Naloxone was given by EMS. But we do have quite a few cases in which someone did administer naloxone to a patient before the ambulance arrived, before EMS got there, or cases where it's not known who administered the naloxone to the patient. So if you want to look at maybe this yes category of people who have an administration by a family member or some other bystander, you could click on that slice, and it's going to filter the rest of the dashboard. You could see maybe that those instances are even more biased towards Friday evenings, or they're even more likely to be just a single administration of naloxone as opposed with more than one administration. Anyway, that's a quick overview of what's on this dashboard. Like all of our dashboards, this one regularly updates as we receive more data from states and territories. So if you come back in a year's time, you'll notice that we'll have another year of data here at the bottom on our rates here. One way to stay up to date on these dashboards is to subscribe. So if you have an account with an MSIS TAC, when you log in, you'll be able to see a subscribe button here. We currently don't have a way to subscribe people outside of those with accounts, but I see that a number of you are with states or vendors, so you would have an account and you could subscribe to this dashboard to see updates every week on how the data is changing. For the rest of you, you'll just have to come and check back at our website to see how things develop. One thing that you can do is you can download this dashboard to maybe share it with others. So we have a couple of options. A PDF and an image are probably the best. So if you want to download it as a PDF, you can click PDF, and you have a lot of options here. Most of our dashboards are formatted to look best in a portrait landscape, and then I would recommend doing just this dashboard. And then if you hit download, it'll generate a nice PDF of this information. And I'll open it up. So if you wanted to share this or print it out, here's a nice PDF format of that information that we have in our data set. So I think that covers everything on the dashboard. If anyone has any questions about this dashboard, I'd love to take them now.
Hey, this is Kathy Curley from PA. I do have a question for you. Is this going to become available in state information so that each state can look up their own information?
Well, we haven't discussed it yet, but it's definitely something that we could do in the future. That's usually a pretty easy transition for us.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Martin from Oklahoma. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Martin.
Okay. So the question I have is when you're calculating the statistics and the rates and all that stuff, so are you just calculating it based off that naloxone was given on a run, or does it include those multiple administrations?
So the calculation would be, so it doesn't double count them if there's more than one administration of naloxone. Trying to figure out the best way to sort of display that to you. But if a record had any naloxone, then that goes to the rate, and then we don't care how many times, just any at all.
Okay, that answers my question. All right, thank you.
And I'm sorry if I missed this, did you have any place that listed the states that are current, the data that is currently included in this?
You know, it's not on this dashboard, but if you go to our homepage, it does appear on our homepage, the list of states that are currently submitting. So down here on our version 3 map, all of the green states are submitting V3 data to us. So that 22 states and territories would be the green ones on this map. Although I do have to mention additionally that this dashboard updates once a week on Sunday. So if a new state comes on board Wednesday, their data would not appear until the following Monday, probably. But the 22 states and territories is going to be the green guys on this map.
And my only concern with that is I use NEMSIS's website all the time, so I would know to go look there to see who's included. But if a regular person actually was trying to search this and stumbled in, I would worry that without a list of reporting states, they would make the assumption that it is reflective of their area.
Ah, that's a good point. I'll look into how we can make that more clear. Does anyone have any other questions about this dashboard or other dashboards that we offer to the public? Yeah, I can go back to the Trends tab. So on the Transit Administration, I didn't stay long here because it's just a line graph of that rate over time with our V2 data.
Now, I just read. Okay, thanks. Hi, Steve. Good. How are you?
One last thing I would like to point out is we do have a user guide for this dashboard. If you ever have questions on the visualizations and maybe don't want to wait for me to respond to your email, there is a companion document here, which I'll open up. My name is Laurel Bader. Thank you. So this document right here kind of includes all of the inclusion criteria and all of the ways that we filtered and what exactly it is we're looking at, as well as sort of defining each visualization. It also talks a little bit about a tab that we're still working on that will use some census data from some healthy counties data to try and correlate that with the naloxone rate. And we're still working out how it's best to visualize that. But there's some information here about that future visualization that we may add in the future. But this just details each visualization, what's going on, and how it was determined. So if you have any questions and don't want to wait for an email response, you can always go here to sort of review our user guide. We also have these user guides for all of our dashboards, almost all of our dashboards. So if you ever have any questions on one of our dashboards, usually there should be one of these links at the top to provide you with some answers. And you can always email us, and if it's business hours here, me or Kevin or the other person on the reporting team here will get back to you with an answer. We're also always open to suggestions for changes or new dashboards. We want to make sure that these are useful to the community. Are there any other questions? All right, hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I know these are scheduled for an hour, but I can never seem to fill an entire hour Starting next month, there's going to be a new person leading these calls, and it's going to be my wonderful coworker, Monet, who leads our communications. She's absolutely wonderful, and I know that she's going to do a great job with these. You all will probably also hear from me again because I may be involved in doing some future presentations on other reporting tools we have in the future. But thank you all for joining us. I appreciate having so many of you on this call. It's really great to see so many people interested in EMS data.